Hi, everyone. Before the episode begins, I just want to remind you to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Marlene the Plant Lady and YouTube, Everything Gardening with Marlene Simon. And remember, please, please, please rate and review on iTunes and Spotify. That just helps the podcast get noticed by more people, and then more people will become better gardeners. And that's what we all want. So enjoy the episode.
Look at that plant. I want you to know that everything was grown in my garden. Don't touch that plant!
Is it poisonous?
She'll become part of the plant.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Garden Hour. I'm your host, Marlene, and this is your January to-do list along with your questions and answers. And that would be Joe. Joe, do you always have to make an entrance like that?
Yeah. It's my call sign.
Is just the boom. Okay. Feel free to jump in with the January to do, but I may not need you until the question and answer. So if you could keep it like a little quiet over there, just a little shh, quiet. All right. So it has been raining a lot. And I think this is our new weather pattern. I don't think new weather pattern, but it seems like it's dry for a couple of years. We don't get any rain, and then bam, but this year's been exceptional. I think up where my parents live up in Placerville, the foothills of the Sierras, they got like 9 inches of rain in one day. And I know places like in Florida, and they're like laughing at us, but we're just not used to that. So we don't have our soils aren't fast draining. We got clogs and debris everywhere, so it's just backing everything up, and it just seems like it's not stop raining for days and days, but that's okay. And then we're getting heavy snow, so that's fine. It's just everything's really just wet and miserable. So if you're in California at all, you're probably being affected by it. So I'm definitely not in my garden much at all, just going out and harvesting some vegetables and seeing what's sort of basically just going, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is this and that when it dries out a bit. But there are things definitely you could do in January, so I'm just going to go through them. Can you plant things vegetable-wise? Yes, you could still sow radish seeds, loose leaf lettuce seeds or the plants, onions, bok choy seed or the plants, fava bean seeds. So there's not too many. We get another chance for some winter veggies to be planted next month, but right now that's really it for this month and as far as vegetables. Now, yes, you can plant perennials, but the big problem right now is just the moisture content in the soil. So if you start digging in this one, it's not that much fun. 2, if you have heavy clay soils, it's just going to compact. You're going to lose all that airspace. It's, when you dig up sections, it's going to form into big blobs and they're going to dry into bricks. And you're going to sort of lose the structure of it. So ideally, that is it's not even so much the cold right now that's inhibiting planting. It's the wet soil. And Joe, it looks like you were just over there like you have to go to the bathroom or something. What is going on?
You're talking about soils, and it sounds like you're talking about them being so wet that it's prohibitive to plant.
Yes.
Okay. Who was it? I believe it was Joe, the garden guy.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And wasn't he into planting in like soil bags, some kind of bags?
Oh, the grow bags.
Grow bags.
Yeah. So in a sense, that is your raised beds. But
even more protected from the moisture, I would think.
No, grow bags is just like a big pot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a fabric bag.
Right.
Yeah,
but
so it's a container.
I'm saying you can start with dry soil right now.
Oh, good point. Yes, if you want to start a winter vegetable garden right now.
If you want to start fresh, you could do that.
Start fresh, yes. And it's also, that is a good point that you make, Joe. I will point out that was a good point. Is that for sure if you have raised beds or pots, that is going to be potting soil in there and it is going to drain much faster and versus your native soil, especially if it has any clay in it, which is going to form into bricks and you're going to lose airspace. But you still want to be careful digging and compressing any soil. But correct, if you were like, hey, I'm going to start a winter veggie garden now, getting new bags of soil, yeah, that is correct. And some potting soil, like the soil in my raised beds, I could easily plant in right now without any problems. So it's a good point, Joe. Every once in a while you say something.
Well, I think you were just probably trying to make some excuses and take the easy way out by saying you just can't work soil right now.
I fully admit when I'm going to be a lazy gardener. Totally admit that. Okay, so with that, yes, you could plant perennials as long as they're not frost sensitive. It's January. Usually January is when we get our cold spell. We could still get cold definitely into February. Remember, I'm coming from zone 9. Your zone may be completely different. Look it up. Different, last frost date for you. Obviously, some of you may not be planting anything if it's very cold. All right, something you can. Oh, question on the floor, and there's only Joe on the floor. So, yep, it's from Joe again.
Frost.
Frost
mitigation. What are your favorite techniques?
Not planting anything that's going to be affected by frost. Lazy gardener once again.
Beyond that, you already have something planted.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Say the one plant for some reason that everybody that I know kills.
Everyone, kills it?
Well, I don't know. My dad does, and I think your dad has
No,
the same
one
issue.
they all want. And they're all proud of.
But it seems to die. Yeah.
No, are you talking about avocado?
Yes.
Yes, they actually keep them alive. My parents live in a colder climate.
Well, my dad's had to pull his out.
No, his didn't die from frost.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So avocado, a young avocado is more susceptible, just like a young citrus is more susceptible. Anything that's young that is on borderline frost sensitive when it's younger. Yeah, so go-to would be a frost blanket or having everything watered. Water everything in before frost comes if you haven't been inundated with rain.
Explain that.
Okay, wow. Very demanding here. Okay. So moist soil will help radiate heat out of it. It's sort of like, you're going to lose moisture, and that moisture is going to be warm air coming up out of the soil. So the soil itself is going to help create a warm pocket around the plant. 2, plants, if they're dehydrated, their leaves will not handle a frost as well as ones that are highly hydrated. Now, the opposite is with succulents. Succulents are already full of moisture. So if you add and go in watering them, they can have so much moisture, their cells could literally freeze and burst, and you just get a mushy plant. So the first thing is, yes, go in well watered, except for succulents. 2, a frost blanket. I do prefer a frost blanket. Cotton sheets, it's minimal protection, but they're usually not as thick. Something breathable, and pin it all the way to the ground so that moisture in the ground, that warm air, can help to create a warm pocket. Don't make lollipops by just sort of cinching the blanket or whatever around the base of the foliage and exposing the trunk. You don't want that. Or if it's a pot, tuck it underneath the pot as well, because you're trying to protect that root ball as well. So, and then, the last one is like the old-fashioned Christmas lights, the old-fashioned ones that are not LEDs. You put them around. They are going to add a tiny bit of heat, so that along with a blanket. But it's so funny. It's like when we had this cold spell early on, that's what everyone wanted to know. This rain we've been getting has been actually pretty warm. I think they're even calling it like a pineapple express. It's pretty warm for us. I'm still freezing, but it's like not getting below 55 at night or 50 at night. So it's pretty darn warm. So we're like not worried about our plants. We've just been having too many trees fall, because then the soil's inundated and they're falling. So yes, protect from frost. Now, if you go to nurseries, if you're making it to nurseries, a lot of their area has been, they bring in the Christmas trees, move the Christmas trees out, and now it's bare root trees, bare root roses, and some bare root shrubs. Now, bare root fruit trees, a lot of growers, this is where you're going to get your best selection of fruit trees, is bare roots. Not to say you can't plant them rooted. What nurseries do is when they don't sell out the bare root, they will pot them up, and then you could get them rooted in. A few things, if you get one that's already in a bag, lift it up, make sure there's not water in it. And if you do store it until you plant it, make sure water doesn't get in that bag. You don't want it to be in standing water. If you get one that's, heeled in, meaning just buried loosely in sawdust or sand, and you can't plant it right away, do the same thing. If you have a compost bin, just put it in there. Just cover those roots so they're slightly moist. You can soak it overnight in lukewarm water to rehydrate the roots. It's not necessary if you've kept it sort of moist. And then you're going to want to plant it, but then there's the whole, well, if you're planting it and it's sopping wet, if you could let the soil dry out, if there's a chance, then go ahead. And a big problem people use is when they plant anything is they take out all the soil. They're like, I'm going to get this plant a head start. I'm going to put new potting soil in it. Don't do that. Use the same exact soil you took out. If you want, you can add a little bit of handfuls of compost planting mix and mix it into the soil. But these trees are going to have to grow in this native soil, so you want them adapted to that. So you want a wider hole. Wider is better, but you never want to go deeper than the root ball. And for Bareroot, it could be a little confusing. It's a good idea to use an undisturbed mound of soil in the center and have the roots sort of drape over. If anything, plant a little bit higher, because as the soil settles, you don't want that tree buried underground. So that's Bareroot. And same thing goes with roses. Inspect them. Anything broken, prune off those dead roots. And do you need to add fertilizer? No, if you're putting it in native soil or in good soil, you really don't need to fertilize now. And of course, if it's raining, you don't need to water it in. But so look for your Bareroot trees, your roses, shrubs. When I say shrubs, sometimes you could find Wisteria forsythia as Bareroot, and you can even find asparagus and strawberries Bareroot. Go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
So you said that these Bareroot fruit trees, they're stored in sawdust?
Some of the nurseries will just make these big bins of sawdust, and then they'll bury the roots in sawdust.
Got it. Okay. So the best way to transport it then, is it to stick it in your car and have that root ball full of sawdust just sitting right on your front seat, just so there's an incessant amount of sawdust that will never leave the car?
In my defense, I was going to do a Good Day Sacramento segment on Bareroot. And now that was like New Year's Day, and January is like the early, beginning of January is the earliest Bareroot. Rainy day, New Year's Day, I ran to a nursery, Redwood Barn. I've had Don Shore on before. I saw they had Bareroot. I'm like, oh, thank God. I bought myself a peach tree that I wanted. Nice, decent one I was able to inspect, make sure that there was no oozing, make sure that, they had nice limb distribution. And normally, yes, a nursery will have bags for you and put some sawdust in it for you. I just took it out of the bin, brought it to the cash register, stuck it in my car, had a lot of sawdust on it still. Away we went. Yeah.
So now your Subaru looks like you've got a lumberjack as a passenger.
I vacuumed it out yesterday.
I think there's still sawdust in
yes,
there.
Remember, I'm the person who used their chainsaw in the back of their Subaru to cut.
I know.
Yes. Yes, but thank you, Joe. How to inspect your Bareroot trees too. I just mentioned, you're going to see the graft at the bottom. Make sure that graft isn't oozing. Make sure there's not a lot of damage. It's quite normal to have a little bit of bark strippage or a little discoloration there. That's fine. Make sure the roots are evenly distributed. Now, as far as the height goes, a lot of nurseries are already chopping them because people don't want really tall fruit trees. They want fruit bushes, but they're not always. So remember, you're looking to start with sort of 3 or 4 nice, evenly distributed branches all along it. So I cut mine down right above like the 4th branch or so. And don't do that if you have grafted ones, because you don't, there's grafts are going to be all along the tree. So if you have a 3-in-1, 4-in-1, what they call like a fruit salad tree, don't do any pruning at all. So if you want your tree to be shorter, now is the time to do it. And so that's it for that. Speaking of fruit trees, though, you still have time to spray for peach leaf curl. That is the fungus that causes that red puckering and leaf defoliation if it gets really bad. And other fungal diseases like apricot shot hole fungus. You're going to want to spray copper, and you can mix in a dormant oil, and that helps it stick. If you've had problems with insects as well, like scale, mealybugs, cottony cushion scale, you can spray the oil alone. The oil can help to smother any overwintering insects. Remember, just coat the whole entire tree. I like to use the Ortho dial spray that you just hook to the hose. You don't have to measure how much you put in. You just set the dial to how much, and then whatever you don't use, you put back in. But of course, if you're mixing the oil, just remember that you've mixed the oil. Now, ideally, you do this 3 times. It was like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Valentine's Day. I know it's been raining a lot, and if you're in an area where it's raining a lot, ideally you have 2 days of dry. So you spray, and the following 2 days are going to be nice and dry. Or, the tree dries out a bit, you spray, and then you have 2 days of dry. So it can be hard to get even one spray in before the flower buds break. As soon as those flower buds break, you don't want to spray it. So if you get one spray in, great. If we get a period of really when it's dry, you could spray every 10 days a few times. Speaking of fruit trees, a lot of people do prune their fruit trees this time of year. I usually wait until it gets a little bit closer to bud break. There's no risk in doing that. In fact, the reason I do that is these trees are actively growing. The idea is they're going to heal the wounds a little bit faster. No matter what, once again, do wait for a dry spell because you don't want water on those wounds. Don't need to apply anything to wounds. If there's, we're talking small branches you're removing, and they're going to heal pretty quick. So don't apply any wound coverings to any of your cuts at all. I think I got it all. I mean, then there's the standard, of course, just, you could always add mulch on top of your soil, smother weeds, buy seeds already. It's a little early to start your summer veggie seeds inside, but you could order them for sure. Yeah, that's it. House plants, you could, it's too wet outside. Go ahead and transplant your house plants.
Any plant emergencies that have happened over the course of the past few weeks?
Well, I mean, the big thing around here is just trees falling.
Yeah.
These trees, the ground gets saturated. The roots can't. Then you get into anytime any roots have been cut in the past, you're already leading to instability. You have a decaying in trees. That's going to lead to it. So that's why when some people send me pictures and there's any sort of fungus, i.e. a mushroom growing out of it, I tell them, get an arborist out there because that's indicative of decay going on in your tree. And it's hard to say from a picture how much. Could be isolated to a branch, or it could be the whole entire tree. So, and it's always good to prune trees so they don't have huge, they're balanced. And there's just some trees like we have these beautiful camphor trees at work, and in the summertime, we all rush to try to park underneath it. But in the wintertime, no one's parking underneath these camphor trees because they're sort of notorious for dropping their limbs even on a mildly windy day. So, but as far as me and plant emergencies, can I talk about at work? Our rarest plant is this miniature water lily. One of our students sourced for Missouri Botanic Gardens. They, I think, lost theirs. So we're literally one of the very few places with this miniature water lily. Yesterday, a student came to me and was like, a rat just got to it.
Ooh, really?
Yes. We were talking today that rats are like your iPhone. When you talk about something and then you get like ads on your iPhone? Literally, we talk about plants, what are the most expensive, and the rats go for them. Wow. There's no rhyme or reason. So today I had a student build a little so it's a small plant, small pot, build a metal cage to plant around it.
How many rats do you have?
A lot. We set traps out. I told you, we have so many rats on campus. I've been seeing them during the day. It's constant trapping them.
I got that. Could you have like a cat in the greenhouse?
We have one cat. I would end up feeding it and it wouldn't do anything. Joe, we have 20 cats.
Well, I know, but not.
Yeah.
I realize
No,
that.
no.
No.
There's no.
How do the rats get in?
Oh, it's not sealed at all. They get in.
Where's it open?
Top vents. There's side vents open. There's window. There's some glass broken on the sides.
Can you put up like grills?
No, we're not going to keep them out. They're inside. The worst is when you're on a ladder and one runs right by you, like eye level along the crossbeam. That's one of my big fears or at night when you're going in, we're working night and you just see them scuttling. But the worst is when they do eat rare plants. Yeah. So, yeah, they literally know the rare plants. So that was a pretty bad emergency. So the plant survived. It's just lost like months of growth on it.
Okay.
So not cool, rats. Not cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that one. I was thinking about on New Year's Eve, we had to go do an emergency hoop house move.
Good point. So we had these huge winds along with all this rain. That's huge winds why a lot of trees are knocking down. Gianluca, who's been on, who has a fabulous succulent collection, he bought a hoop house, which is, greenhouse, but with cloth. And his plants are inside there. And those are ones that are not allowed or supposed to get wet at all in the wintertime. As they're not actively growing, and you never want to water succulents that are not actively growing. Anyways, it was emergency because I had just gotten out of the shower. I saw he called. I ignored him as I do when people call.
Yeah, I got a text.
And then my friend Eric called, and I'm like, "Ooh, something's going on," but I ignored that as well. And then you came up and you said, "Eric just texted me. He said call Gianluca. It's an emergency." I knew it was plant related right away because that's what plant nerds do, but I thought it was like possibly something at the conservatory. No, Gianluca's hoop house was going to be blown away and then his plants were going to be. So we ran over there, took the hoop house out, moved the plants into the garage. Yeah, it was a plant emergency. So most people on New Year's were out doing things. Yeah. We still made it home in time, like at 10 to go to bed. Thank God.
No, I think earlier than that.
Maybe, 8. It felt like 10. Might as well have been midnight. All right. Should we answer some questions? Okay. So what I did is normally I find ones that people have asked me, but this one I just said, hey, post some questions right here. So hopefully they're going to listen.
First one's from Pat. Lots of rain. How much of a break do I need to spray copper on my fruit trees?
Yeah, I was just talking about that. So, yep, copper, liquid copper for the peach leaf curl. Ideally, the tree would be dry. You'd spray it, and you'd have at least 2 days of dry. Now, ideally, you'd wait for the tree to dry. You spray. If you could only get 1 day of dry, that's fine. It's going to dry pretty fast. You just don't want to spray it, and a few hours later, have it rain. The longer it could sit on there dry, the better. So I would aim for at least, the tree drying off a little bit. When I say drying off a little bit, it's just not, raindrops falling off it. So it could still be, wet looking. You just don't want water running off of it. And then spray it. And if you could get a day dry, that's great. Which I think Thursday here, it might actually not rain during the day, but it's still not going to be 24 hours. So.
Okay, next question. This one's from Lucy. Can a rose stem from a bouquet actually be rooted by scratching it up and putting it in a clear plastic or glass bottle greenhouse? Oh, and then cutting the bud off.
Okay. So here's the thing is, yeah, I mean, in a sense, when you're getting a rose stem, it is a stem, and that's how you do softwood, hardwood cuttings. Now, the problem with it is how long has it been off of the plant? How has it been taken care of? Ideally, it's a picked flower, so growers want to get it into moisture as quick as possible because they're trying to, salvage the flower. So I'm assuming it's all been treated, refrigerated, in water, but it's still been off the plant for a while. And some of these stems that have had actively growing flowers on it aren't the best material to make a cutting of. But with that said, yes, in theory, and most likely, it would take. So the key here is say it's like 8 inches long, I would cut it down to like 4 to 6 inches. You want to make a fresh cut. And where you want to make that fresh cut is underneath the node, that little bump. You don't need to scratch the sides off. You don't need to do that. You just need to cut the bottom. Now, for roses, it's a good idea to use a rooting hormone, especially one that's not actively growing, like it's not a new shoot. It has a flower on it. So I would get some rooting hormone, tap that in. And it's not so much a greenhouse that you need to get in, and you need to get it into a media that's going to hold some moisture but have a lot of aeration. So I would do straight perlite. You could buy small bags of perlite and just put it in a pot. It doesn't need to be a clear pot. And then you're going to want to cover it and put it in a Ziploc bag or a clear Tupperware container, something there that's going to act like a greenhouse. You don't want to just start it in water. Roses don't start great in water. And yes, cut the rosebud off because that's an energy sink. And, it's going to take a while. Put it in a bright window, not direct sun, inside this time of year. If it's, spring, you can move it outside in the shade. But you want it to have high humidity. But that's it. In theory, it should, but it really depends on how it was treated beforehand. And, yeah.
All right. Makes sense. Patty, when to transplant a Little Ollie olive tree from a big plastic pot to the ground? Is Little Ollie the name of a specific type of olive? Or?
Yeah, it's a non-fruiting, so it's an ornamental one.
Okay.
That is, the name Little Ollie is a little misleading because I think they can get up to 8 feet tall, 8 feet wide, anywhere from 4 to 8 feet wide. But it is a non-fruiting one. So if you like the look of an olive and you don't want the mess of olives, then a Little Ollie is cute. But it doesn't stay like, it's not going to be like a 2-foot little shrub. So they are good trees. I love olive trees. I think they're great trees. Very low water, but good draining. So you mentioned me saying you can plant now, especially things that are not frost sensitive. An olive tree is not frost sensitive, but the soil is going to be what is prohibitive right now. So if you are putting it in a pot with good soil that's fast draining, like Joe mentioned, then you could plant it now. If you're putting it in the ground and you have, pretty heavy clay or even any clay soils, or you start digging and you hear that sucking sound of moisture, I would wait until the soils dry out. And don't worry about leaving it in a pot right now. It's not really actively growing. If it's raining, it's getting plenty of rain. If it's, obviously if it's somewhere where it's getting rain. It could stay in the pot until springtime. No problem.
Okay. We're going to go on to Michelle. I'm trying to propagate fig tree cuttings. Do you have any suggestions? I cut the limb off. I shaved the bottom, put in EB Stones 420 soil, and wrapped in plastic for 1 week for humidity. Now I'm waiting. Don't know if there's anything else that I can do to help them succeed, or if I've done everything I can.
Okay, so that's similar to the rose stem cuttings, but assuming you took the cuttings off of the tree, so they're fresh cuttings. Now with figs, I always prefer to do everything that's actively growing in the springtime because the hormone, you've heard me mention, responsible for root formation, auxin, is being formed at those growth tips. But I've also done cuttings of figs when people have been pruning them in the dormant season, and it's fine. But I wouldn't do anything thicker than, say, a pinky's width. So a pinky's width cutting and about 6 to 8 inches long is ideal. And so, you want that fresh cut at the bottom. You don't need to shave off the bottom. You just need to make a fresh cut off of it. And you have it in the EB Stone 420 soil. It sounds like a potting soil. You usually don't want to start any cuttings in potting soil because it's too wet. Remember, they don't have roots, so they're not actively pulling up moisture from the soil. What they want is something that's going to have a lot of aeration around it. I'm not saying figs won't take in that. Figs are usually not very finicky, but I absolutely say perlite, 50% perlite, 50% vermiculite would work. But your soil probably would work. Just don't keep it really wet. If it starts getting, like mold on top, if you start seeing any mush down at the bottom, take the cuttings out, recut them, and then trying something else. And you wrapped it in plastic for 1 week for humidity. That's not long enough. The idea is to create humidity until there's roots so it could start picking up moisture from it. And you wrapped it in plastic. I'm assuming that's like the greenhouse. You don't want to wrap it. You just want to have you don't want plastic touching the cuttings. You'd want it like a little greenhouse. And even the figs don't necessarily need it because they don't have leaves right now. So they're not necessarily transpiring and growing as much. So you want the media to be a little bit moist. But if there's no leaves on it, I would take the covering off. And yes, you're going to wait. And you're going to wait a while. And it could actually be a while for the fig cuttings to take. Bright light out of heater vents. I would bring them inside. I wouldn't start them outside right now. It's a little cold to do some root cuttings. But that's it. They're relatively easy to do cuttings of.
So you were saying that EB Stone stuff is a potting soil?
I believe it's a potting. Yeah.
You know that stuff. You've talked to him about it.
Oh, I did. I got a sample from EB Stone. Yeah, the 420.
Yeah.
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 I mean, obviously, the 420, everyone's trying to market for cannabis.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It says it contains premium aged fir bark.
Mm-hmm.
COIR. What is that?
Core.
What's that?
Coconut core, which is basically what they use. Usually they use it instead of peat because peat's not super sustainable. But it holds moisture but allows aeration.
Okay. Sphagnum moss, pumice, earthworm casting, seabird guano, crab meal, humic acids, mycorrhizal fungi, and beneficial soil bacteria.
See, all of that is for things with roots. And since the cuttings have no roots, that's not what you want.
Got it.
You literally could put it in styrofoam if styrofoam held moisture. It's just something to hold a little bit of moisture and create a lot of aeration. So it's not saying it's not, I mean, it sounds like it has a lot of good stuff in it for potting soil.
Right.
Once things have roots in it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Somebody with our favorite name, Jolene.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's like if we were to have had a kid, Joe and Marlene, Jolene.
And we were, all right, I'm going to bitch a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know what this newfound
I know.
Dolly
thing is.
Yeah.
I
mean,
know.
we've been Dolly fans.
Dude, your dad had Dolly's 8 tracks way before.
Hello. Like, that's where I first heard Dolly.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it happened with Johnny Cash with you. When you owned the bike shop, Johnny Cash was playing nonstop. And then the movie Johnny Cash came out and everyone would come in and be like.
I think you're off. No.
Oh, I'm off.
You're off there.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Johnny came out with this very late.
I'm Hurt video.
Not just that one, but he did like 4 with Rick Rubin, the rock guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyways, that kind of brought Johnny back.
I thought it was the movie. And then, okay. Anyways, you were listening to him way. But yeah, Dolly, I don't know.
Random.
Yeah.
I know.
I actually think she's made a big, she must have been promoting something. Sort of like Shania came back this year. It was like, oh, Shania. And all of a sudden it's like Shania is this icon now.
No, I don't get that.
No?
No, because everybody at my gym has to put up with
Shania,
my music.
Yeah.
Dolly's on there, and they all like Dolly.
Oh, yeah.
But there's more Shania than there is Dolly, and they're like, Shania.
Oh.
Some days I'll just put on the Shania Spotify radio station, and they hate it.
Don't hate on Shania.
I know.
My God. She's... Yeah. But yeah, the Dolly thing. But yeah. I mean, it's great. Everyone should love Dolly. You know, I'm glad everyone loves her, but it's just weird. You're right. It just seemed like she was, like she was always there. And then all of a sudden now it's like, Dolly.
I know.
I don't know. But yeah, Jolene, that would be,
Nobody loves Hank Williams Jr.
I don't like any the original Hank Williams. Boring, whiny, God, that old. I mean, okay, I don't like new country at all. That sucks. But the old country sucks too. I mean, how twangy can you get?
It's fantastic.
Oh my God.
I play a lot of that in the gym.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I would run really fast away from it. Okay. All right. Anyways, where's Jolene ask?
When do I prune hydrangeas? All the old leaves have fallen off.
Okay. So I think with not this past Andrew Bunting, but I did another episode with Andrew Bunting, and it was fall garden prep, I think. And then at the end, we did a little hydrangea thing. So look for that one. I forget what number that is because we went into hydrangea care. But with that said, not knowing what hydrangea, I'm sure it's the mop head, large leaf, macrophylla. Those ones you've heard me mention that you don't want to prune them all down or prune too much now into spring because their flower buds form on old growth. So any growth that had formed last spring and fall, they form buds. So if you now go and prune, you're pruning off potential flowers. Now, you really don't need to prune hydrangeas. The only reason why you need to prune them is if there's a lot of old stems. You could cut the old stems, those ones down, broken ones, cut them down. But you don't necessarily ever need to just go and give it a big buzz cut all the way to the ground. Now, to remove the flowers, you want to remove those when they faded at the end of the year and end of the season, September, or even earlier than that, because that's when they start setting their flower buds. Now, it's totally normal for them to lose their leaves if it's cold. That's fine. You're probably going to have all these sticks. But unless they're really crowded, I wouldn't do anything with them. Now, the smooth hydrangeas, which are the arborescents, when I was talking to Andrew, I didn't realize that those ones bloom on new wood, and that's what people in the cold areas grow because, the hydrangeas, when they get really cold, are going to die down. So the arborescents will come up and they prune on new growth along with the panicle hydrangeas, the paniculatas. And so look for those if you're in a cold area. But as far as the microphyllas, you don't prune them hard at all in the spring. And yeah, so I'm assuming that. So don't worry about the leaves falling off. They look like utter crap right now. All the plants look like utter crap. People are sending me pictures and it's like, oh, plants just look like crap. I mean, I look like crap right now. Don't say anything, Joe. No, Marlene, you look so great right now. Oh, thanks, Joe.
You ready?
Yeah.
Leslie, can my Boston Fern survive in my enclosed outdoor room, or should I bring it inside?
That one really confused you. You know what that reminded you
What is
of?
an enclosed outdoor room?
Joe, it's like when we had to go to Vegas that one time, and we were at the Venetian, and everything's inside, but then there was a restaurant that was pretending it was outside, and the maitre d's like, would you like to eat inside or outside? And we're all looking. I'm like, isn't this all inside?
That was a yearly thing for a long time.
I only went twice.
Yeah. We always used to bring, a friend of ours who will remain nameless and would always comment on it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was funny. But, okay, I know exactly what she's talking about. It's like a sunroom. It's a sunroom. I'm assuming it's a sunroom and not open with screens. But it's enclosed. Yes. That's great. I would just have plants in there. Oh my God, that would be great. But yes, it could completely live there if it's an enclosed outdoor room. So Boston ferns are pretty hardy as far as temperatures. They're not as finicky as other tropical plants. Now, would you grow it outside, out in the open? In the winter, no. It will suffer frost damage. But in an enclosed area that doesn't get below, I would say 45, it's totally fine. Now, Boston ferns grow really fast, and you could divide them by cutting into them with a serrated knife. Remember, they grow so fast and they have so many leaves that they're going to brown. They're going to have that whole layer of brown underneath. So it's sort of like when you're cleaning up your house and you shove everything in the closet. All the old leaves on them are underneath, so you don't ever want to lift up the new leaves to show how messy it is underneath there. But yes, no, you could completely, it doesn't need to come inside. And remember, a lot of ferns, if you kill them off completely, a lot of them have rhizomes, underground stems. so that are still alive. So, the maidenhair fern, if you kill off the top, even the Boston fern, if you kill off the top, the rhizomes, the modified stems are still alive. So it'll come back. So that's one thing where people think, oh, they lose all the foliage on their fern. They're like, I killed it. I mean, that's true with some of them, but the ones with rhizomes are going to bounce right back. And you can cut a Boston fern all the way down and it'll regrow. But that's not the best way to control. The best way to control the size is to divide it, serrate a knife, and make it smaller. If you have a question or a comment, email me, marlenetheplantlady@gmail.com. Remember to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Marlene the Plant Lady. I do have a YouTube, Everything Gardening, with various topics on there. And remember, if you like this podcast, rate and review. You could actually leave it a 5-star on Spotify and on, of course, Apple podcast. You could leave a comment. Leave a nice comment because that makes me seen more, and then more people could find gardening and they could learn more and be happier. And I don't have to hear people say, oh, I kill everything. And then I won't have to say, oh, I kill a lot of things too. That's it. Because then we could just be like, oh, I kill things, but I'm such a good gardener. I'd be like, I kill things too, and I'm a good gardener. Because that's what, thank God doctors aren't that way. Can you imagine? Like, if a doctor was like, don't worry, I kill patients too. Like, oh. But when I say, don't worry, I kill plants too, people are like, oh, thank God, I feel so much better. I'm like, don't worry. Anyways, that was a tangent. So leave a review, tell a friend, share this. And until next time, everyone, happy gardening.